Welcome to this week's episode of Beyond Sports. I'm your host, the Fitted Nuggets fan, and joining me is my co-host, Bob Taylor.
Hey, hey.
Well, everybody, we have a terrific episode lined up for you all today. We're going to start it off with some Nuggets now, just covering how the Nuggets did this past week, heading off a great 3-1 performance. Segueing that into our favorite segment, the Nuggets Knowledge segment, where Bob and myself go against each other, trying to guess one of the Nuggets greats throughout history, trying to stump the other one and see if they can figure out who we're trying to talk about. From there, we're going to be having a great interview with Garret Lee. It was a great time having him in the studio. Definitely one of the funnier guys that we've had on our show before, so it was a nice change of pace for us and really great to see kind of the status of Russell Wilson's bathrooms. I know that's a hot topic for everybody out there right now, so be sure to tune in for that interview. And then lastly, we will be finishing it up with a segment of our team profile. We're going to be showcasing the Orlando Magic and just kind of highlighting them and their performance so far this season. But without further ado, we are going to jump right into Nuggets now. So, Bob, 3-1 on the Nuggets this week. Oh, man, super disappointing loss against the Mavericks. I wish we were saying 4-0. I thought we would be saying 4-0. But the Mavericks really fought us off for that game.
Yeah, and after that Jamal Murray 3, I definitely thought, I was like, there's no way they're losing this game. We're definitely taking the dub. But I will say, I don't think it's necessarily a disappointing loss because that was not a great game from Jokic or Murray, really. I mean, it's definitely shooting percentage-wise, it wasn't. I think they were combined 13 for 36 shooting between the two of them. So I don't think that's going to happen again. And all it took was a insane Kyrie buzzer-beating floater, which, of course, he does it. I mean, just one of the most skilled players in the league. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of good things that came out of it. Outside of giving up, 21 offensive rebounds to the Mavericks?
Man, that's really rough, especially with a Mavericks team that is starving for some lower interior presence. So to give up 21 offensive boards, I know they got Derek Lively. PJ Washington was a terrific move for the Mavericks in the offseason. I think that super underrated play on their part. But
Jones Jr. did a good job rebounding too, especially on the offense.
Yeah, and the Mavericks are going to be okay in the long run. I mean, like you said, that was a bad game for the Nuggets and a good game for the Mavericks. You know, one thing that I've liked, though, that I've seen from this team, and unfortunately it ended a loss against the Mavericks, but several of our wins have come when Murray and Jokic both have not scored over 20 points. Yeah. And I think that having that ability and having that player set around you, and especially MPJ, I think has been the biggest thing.
He's done really well.
Alongside of CB and Peyton Watson both. I think both of them have really stepped it up in the consistency factor. Specifically CB, we're starting to see a lot more of what we saw from him during the playoffs and leading up to the end of the regular season. He's kind of coming in just the same way he did last year. He's getting hot right now.
Yeah.
And coming in time just when we need him. I mean, the bench looks really strong. Justin Holiday, for whatever reason, when he gets more minutes, plays very well. And then when he gets bench minutes, just can't get anything done. It's such a conundrum with him.
Yeah, he did not do very well against the Mavericks. He was kind of struggling a little bit. But I do agree, against the other three teams this week, he's definitely looked, good. He had 13 against the Spurs, which was the previous game.
And a clutch 13.
Yeah.
Like a very positive, impactful 13 points. And that's one thing I've liked about Justin Holiday. And hopefully, again, it's just going to come down to that consistency factor. And I think as long as the bench has enough weapons like Reggie Jackson, Justin Holiday, Peyton Watson, CB, as long as we can get two of those guys to really kind of overperform for a game, I don't see anyone stopping us in a 7-game series in this playoffs. And I'm excited. I mean, it is right around the corner here. 3-1 on this week. I feel like every week we're coming back, specifically since the All-Star game. 3-1 pretty much every week. They're, 11-2 now?
I think so, yeah.
11-2 since All-Star break. I mean, that's about as good as you can ask for. Only one loss over the course of a month since All-Star. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
2 losses.
So just since the course of All-Star break, a month span of time.
Okay.
Yeah, there was only one loss over a 30-day span of time. Either way, still incredibly impressive. I just like that we're having this kind of talk about the Nuggets. You know, I'd say before the All-Star break, I wasn't necessarily doubtful, but I did not think they were as strong a contender as they are appearing to be now.
Yeah. I would definitely agree so. I mean, ever since the break, they've really just kicked it into gear. I know everyone keeps saying, like, what did Jokic text the team? Which I think is pretty funny. But at the same time, I think they've always been ready for this and they've always been at this level. But they kind of had the championship hangover. They kind of just chilled for a little bit. And while they still were a top 3 team in the West. They weren't chilling every night, don't get me wrong, but there definitely were nights that I feel like some players might have been taken off or trying to rest up or just not having a good game. And then since the break, everybody's on all the time for the most part.
Yeah, all the games have felt like
at least the
atmosphere.
starters.
I mean, they really have, and they're decimating the teams that they should be beating, which I love to see. I mean, hell, even the Raptors gave them a tough run for their money, and they still came out a 6-point win. And for those of you that watched that game, I mean, at one point they were down 21 points against the Raptors.
I think 21 or 22,
and they still didn't let it. They didn't let them come back and win. I was at that game, and it was dead energy there for a little bit. But the fans stayed in it. The Nuggets stayed in it. They stayed tough. They stayed stuck to their guns, and that's what's going to win them in the playoffs. It's just being able to really pull themselves out of those tough starts, those rough beginnings. Yeah, and I'm just so excited. Well, and the funniest thing for me is I think the comparison from this year to last year is just almost identical.
It's very similar.
We had the same mentality going into the All-Star break last year.
I keep seeing the records as it was last year and this year through so many games.
Almost the exact same.
And I feel like every time I see it, it's the exact same.
It's like 1 or 2 games off, maybe.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's identical. And I feel like the feelings were the same, too, because I remember following the team so closely last year. I went to tons of games. And every time I'm just like, man, are they going to do it this year? And, as Nuggets fans, you get sucked into it. Like, oh, this is our year. A lot of sports teams are always like, this is our year. And then for them to go all the way and win, that's a very specific feeling you remember. And it's just having that same kind of like doubt in the beginning, now more to affirmation after the All-Star game. Like, wow, this is a very truly contending team. It's just so funny to have such a flashback from it all.
And I think that was really shown, especially in the Toronto game. Jokic had just an insane third quarter. What was it? 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, all while they were down 22 to pretty much lead the charge back. And that's just phenomenal to see. Murray popped off a little bit. He had 26-5, 12 assists. His playmaking's been pretty well this season. This week is what I meant to say. He's actually averaging 5.25 assists. So not his season average, but he's been making a lot of good plays this week. Against the Heat, he didn't look that great. He kind of had an off night. However, it was really pretty much just the MPJ show. You know what I mean? 25 and 7 rebounds. He was shooting lights out. 5 of 9 from 3, 9 of 16 from the field. He just played incredibly well. And so did Reggie Jackson, I will say. Finally kind of figured it out a little bit and started finding his groove, especially late in the game. He ended up having 19 minutes, which is more than his average. So I would say Malone kind of believed in him that night and let him do his thing, and it showed.
Yeah. Reggie came in like a dog that game and really took over at the end and helped propel the Nuggets to a victory. And I think one of the things that we've seen is, Murray kind of taking a little bit of a step back this week offensively. That was a little disappointing to see. Not sure why. Maybe it's just the fatigue of being so focused lately. But not really any super impressive games from him outside of that one versus Toronto this past week. Almost the same thing with Jokic. Obviously, he's had a couple of big games. But for him, just some very odd games like against the Mavericks, 16, 11, and 7. Then we look at
getting hacked all game.
Yeah, and then the Heat, 12, 14, and 6. Now, that's a victory, and I love to see those types of victories. But those 2 games are very odd from Jokic. I mean, I could probably count on one hand how many games he's had with similar stats this year where they're less than productive games for him.
Yeah.
So, very comfortable with how they're playing. Good to see them come in 3-1. with their two superstars kind of in a down week, though, is my main point. And
Definitely.
losing to the Mavericks. A loss is a loss, don't get me wrong. But, it's still a good victory to see it's still a good loss to see when it's hard fought and our two superstars aren't performing at the level of expectation that we normally have of them. So, again, just the toughness that the Nuggets have right now.
And I think that's a lot from MPJ stepping up.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, he's just caught fire.
A 20-point-per-game MPJ alongside of a producing Jokic and a producing Murray with counterparts of AG, KCP, and the rest of the bench unit. Again, just unstoppable.
Definitely.
Unstoppable. And MPJ is the key to the season, in my opinion, and the key to our playoffs is along with AG. And if we can keep them in line, I think we're going to have a great year.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been Nuggets Now with Beyond Sports. Follow us on social media at Beyond Sports 5280. Call in live to the show at 720-446-8463. We've got an exciting segment of Nuggets knowledge coming up after this break. Tune in shortly after this. Welcome back to Beyond Sports. Well, that was an exciting edition of Nuggets Now. Always good to see our boys doing a 3-1 out of the week. Just looking to see that performance of domination continue as we progress on heading into that playoffs. But now we have our segment called Nuggets Knowledge. So for those of you who have not done a Nuggets Knowledge or have not heard our Nuggets Knowledge before, what we're going to be doing is listing off some stats. And Bobby here is going to try and guess what Nuggets player I'm talking about. This can be any Nuggets player throughout Nuggets history. Just can't be a current player. And basically what we're trying to do is identify the player, place them in Nuggets history, and then place them in NBA history. Some are a little bit easier than others. But for this week, I think I'm going to stump you. This is a good one. We've got a good few stats here. Not tons of accolades to go off with this player, but I will say a very notable nugget, to say the least. So, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So his Nuggets averages, so this is going to be specifically with the Nuggets organization, this player averaged 12.4 points per game, 3.1 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game in 5 total seasons. So not super crazy, but again, almost a household name with the Nuggets. I would say for sure a household name with Nuggets fans. Has a 6th Man of the Year award. Best season was 15.4 points per game with the Nuggets, coming off the bench and winning that 6th Man of the Year award. 2-time NBA champion, obviously not with the Nuggets organization. A McDonald's All-American MVP. So pretty notable there. Hot shot coming right out of high school. And then an NBA Slam Dunk Contest participant, placed 3rd place. So not crazy, but obviously a good enough dunker to be considered for the competition. Now, here's where it gets tricky. That's all the stats I have for you. Now, it's funny. When I was looking through these stats, I expected a lot more to come up in the accolades department, but there just really wasn't a whole lot, even though this player has been involved quite a bit around the NBA. So, without further ado, Bob, I'm going to give you your one and only guess, as that is all the information I could provide.
J.R. Smith.
It is J.R. Smith. That is correct. There was no hesitation on that.
The 6th Man of the Year and the dunk con. I'm going to go ahead and guess the 6th Man of the Year 2005, 6.
I actually don't have that information pulled up directly, but it was around that time period. That was around the era that he was in. I would say it's probably a little later than that, though. It had to have been like a 2009, 2010 maybe.
Okay.
Because his Cavs run was kind of mid-2010s, and that was after he already played with the Knicks for some years. So
2013. Wow. Okay. I figured it was going to be with the Nuggets with Carmelo.
Yeah, no. Surprisingly not. But he did play 5 seasons, so he got a little bit of that Melo era. Obviously part of a very iconic Nuggets team.
Oh, definitely.
Without a doubt, a household Nuggets name. 2-time NBA champion.
Has one of the coolest in-game dunks over somebody I've ever seen.
Yeah.
On the Nuggets.
Oh, electric in-game dunker, to say the very least. Kind of surprised he finished 3rd. With somebody with his leaping ability, and I remember that dunk contest, he did not do very well. I want to say he just did some 360s and windmills, kind of what everyone does who doesn't know what to do in the dunk contest does. but very lackluster performance from somebody who has quite a bounce ability.
Yeah.
And then obviously his three-point shooting was something to be remembered. I know George Karl remembers it all too well.
Yeah.
With J.R. Smith starting off his playoff series 0 for 12 over 4 games from 3.
A very classic 3-and-D guy.
Yeah, very classic mold for that. Kind of, again, a remnant of an old NBA style player, I think. Just the mentality, the attitude, everything was different with JR. And I got to say, I got a soft spot for J.R. Smith, though.
I love him.
One of
He's
my
awesome.
all-time favorite players.
Yeah.
And I think it's so crazy when we look at these stats and we see 12.4 points per game for the Nuggets. Just the presence that he had. I mean, Bones Highland had more points per game in his time here. And so it's just kind of crazy to see somebody have left such a great impact on the team without really providing a whole lot. I mean, he's not notably great in a playoff situation. Actually, quite the opposite. Notably very ungreat in the playoffs.
Well, that was one game.
That was a playoff series.
That one game where he messed up with the time clock, I feel like is why he gets not a good rap for a playoff performer. However, he did do incredibly well against the Warriors, especially in that 3-1 comeback. He was a huge reason.
We're talking more specifically with the Nuggets organization.
I guess that's true.
In the time with George Karl, I mean, that was why he got traded, was because he had Will Barton syndrome, where he was just chucking the ball up and he thought he was a star player. And he very well could have been had he been more of a systematic player. But, I mean, we got to figure out where this guy lands on an all-time Nuggets list. I mean, where would you put him? I mean, somebody's such a household name. Obviously great, but just didn't accomplish very much. I mean, Sixth Man of the Year, not very many Sixth Man of the Year in the Nuggets history. I can't really recall any.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of a single other person that would be Sixth Man of the Year for the Nuggets, but
either way, where would you be placing him in history for the Nuggets organization?
For the Nuggets, I feel like I'm going to overrank him just because I like him so much. But
I think we all would. I mean, all right, let's narrow it down like we usually do, right? So are we putting him top 25? I mean, we're talking about a player with no real accolades to speak of outside of the Sixth Man of the Year, which is definitely an accomplishment.
And a third place in the dunk contest. He
finished second for Sixth Man of the Year the year before he won. So, I don't know. I mean, do you put him top 25? I'd say top 30. I'd probably give him 30.
I think 30 is a fair.
I think that's fair. From a statistical output, though, it's kind of hilarious. Nene actually had a much better Nuggets career than JR, but I would probably put him above Nene from a team impact perspective, just from my own perception until I started seeing these stats. But with the Sixth Man of the Year award, Nene never really won anything like that, and I think that's going to be the ultimate separation. I think Nene is ultimately more involved in the NBA as a whole, just not necessarily from like an output perspective, just like with the FIBA World Cup Championship and some of the other stuff that he won. But I think 30 is a good spot for JR.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also think you're mixing up Nene with Kenneth Faried.
I am.
For what we did.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
Just both. All I do is catch oops, love highlight plays.
Kenneth Faried should be in the NBA right now. That is a very big topic going around, but not to digress from JR. So we'll put JR in 30 for a Nuggets all time, but for an NBA all time, where does a guy like that belong? And I think the things we have to look at, and whenever we make this list, it always comes down to what have they accomplished in their time, right? And we're talking about a 2-time NBA champion, and like you mentioned, a pretty important ingredient to those 2 championships.
And especially
I would say
the 3-1 comeback.
Yeah, I would absolutely say so there. A pivotal role on that team, and then coming over to the Lakers, winning it with them. Just a lot of different things happening with him. But it's also hard to place because from a statistical output, you can't really say he's much more than a role player.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he is a role player, but I think he's just one of those high-level role players that really affect a team. Like an Aaron Gordon, for
Bruce
instance.
Brown.
Or Bruce Brown.
Yeah, I'd see a Bruce Brown from him just with his typical role, kind of an off-the-bench explosive player.
Yeah.
Definitely not the clamps that AG possessed. Pretty good, though. He's not bad. He's definitely a good defender. Surprisingly good defender, I would say, for how good, and his offensive style usually doesn't complement defense very well. So it was good to see him actually very, very much step it up in that department. But, okay, so all-time NBA, where are we putting him? Top 1,000? I mean, I'd say so. Two-time champion, I'd say you get in the top 25%, winning twice.
I would agree. I mean, I think I hate to do this again, to just do the 30. He's 30th on our Nuggets list, so 30 times 30. But
yeah, but the two-time champion, I think, gives him a bit of a bigger nod when you look at the NBA scope, because we can't really consider that.
I definitely agree.
For the Nuggets all time.
I definitely agree. I just think I might rate him higher than 900. Honestly, I think I could put him at like a 750 or even 800.
Yeah, I could definitely give him a 750. I think that's fair. You know, with the top 75 greats, they've all had 10 players on their team, roughly, who were great alongside of them. Yeah. Now, granted, obviously not all of them are going to be in that top 1,000, but if we can at least say there were 10 other people that supported that player along the way, or whatever you want to say, I think it's a fair summation to put him at 750. That has been Nuggets Knowledge with Beyond Sports. Follow us on social media at Beyond Sports 5280. You can call into the show anytime live at 720-446-8463. We got a great interview with Garret Lee coming up after this. Tune in shortly. Welcome back to Beyond Sports. I'm your host, a Fitted Nuggets fan, and with me today is Garret Lee.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you so much, Garret, for coming on the show. Really happy to have you. And for those of you guys who don't know Garret, to all our listeners out there, Garret is the gentleman that is currently most known for comparing Russell Wilson's touchdown record to his bathroom count. That's correct, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He's got a solid amount of bathrooms. So, yeah, it was fun comparing how many touchdowns he threw to that. And,
yeah, kind of scary that we have a quarterback that made $50 million a year that could be compared to the amount of bathrooms in his house when it came to touchdowns. And a little scary there in that first year that he really struggled to hit that number.
Yeah, I think it was week 15, right around then, when he finally hit the amount of bathrooms or passed it. I'd have to look at the exact number.
So what was the total amount of bathrooms in his house for the listeners out there who don't know that number?
12. He had 12 bathrooms. But I think the craziest part is that he only had 4 bedrooms. So three bathrooms per bedroom is a pretty odd ratio.
That seems excessive.
That's what
excessive.
I thought. Yeah.
I mean, what are they doing in that house?
Yeah. Plenty of room to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. So. I mean, obviously they just wanted to make sure there was never a line in the bathroom. I think they're trying to take a page out of Steve Ballmer's book. If I had to take a guess, just keep the action in the house and not in the bathroom line. So good to see that Russell Wilson was, taking that strategic approach with it. So, obviously one of the more funny skits that I've seen on TikTok, especially for Broncos fans out there, I think we all had a good laugh when it came to those comparisons, and just with this whole horrible on fire roller coaster that has been the Russell Wilson era. I think that was a little bit of a bright moment that we could at least laugh at our pain.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to go for, at least. I didn't. Some people got upset about it, obviously, because people get upset about everything online. But I was never trying to, talk down on Russell Wilson or anything. It was just, it's just funny. Just a lighthearted comparison is really all I was going for. So.
Yeah, and you're just sticking to the facts. You're simply informing people, hey, just so you're aware, Russell Wilson has X amount of touchdowns, and he also has X amount of bathrooms.
Exactly.
I don't see an issue with that. I don't know how anyone could realistically. He has
a lot of bathrooms, and hopefully he gets a lot of touchdowns, right?
So. It's like, I'm sorry, is that not true, sir?
Exactly, yeah.
So some of that backlash online, anything that sticks out in particular that was just wildly ridiculous when it came to some criticism?
I wouldn't say anything, too ridiculous. It was just, most people liked it. Even if you go back and look at the comments on it, most people usually said, hey, this is really funny. Like, some people they used it as a way to go at Russell Wilson, which again was never my intention. I don't want people going at anyone, even people that get paid millions of dollars to throw touchdowns. Yeah, just wanted to keep it lighthearted. But yeah, every now and then people were like, hey, why are you attacking him? Or, oh my God, I'm not meaning to attack anyone. So, but no, nothing that really sticks out, really just comments.
Well, that's good. Yeah, especially when it comes to the internet. I think I've made some posts before, and sometimes the comments are just like, I have no idea where you're coming from.
You never know what you're going to get. So
but that's the internet as a whole. So, with that, where did that really come up? Where was kind of the light bulb effect for you for that skit?
Well, I had already been making TikToks, not really about sports in any way. But just one day when I read an article about the house that him and Sierra bought, when I saw that it was a 4-bedroom, 12 bath, I said, "Oh, that's crazy." So I just made a quick TikTok like, "Hey, this is weird. Like, what is he doing? Why would he need 3 bathrooms per bedroom? Like, what is going on here?" And then that got some traction, but then it was actually like, so not this past season, but the season before, when he had like 3 or 4 touchdowns and it had already been a few weeks, or I was like, oh, this could be an interesting comparison. I really don't know what made me think of it, but it was like week 3. I think I made the first video, and that got, I don't know, 1 million or so views. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll just keep doing it. Didn't think it would take, the entire season, but it did. So that was cool. And then obviously this past year I did it again. He was obviously better. It didn't take the whole season this time, but yeah, it was fun. It was a cool thing to do. So
No, I feel like some of the best content comes from it just kind of happens.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
it was just such at the right time and such a funny comparison. Like I said, kind of a little bit of a bright spot in, like I said, just the horribleness that was the Russell Wilson era. And man, last year was super tough. And thankfully this year was a little bit more comparable. But I have to know, did he accept the trophy?
He did not. So I actually did reach out to some people in the Broncos organization, and they did get back to me and said, hey, like, he wouldn't go for this. So I don't know if I should expand on that at all, but he apparently, I heard that he did know about it. He was not a fan, and that is where it was left.
So he was informed.
Yeah, like he knew about the videos and he knew about the comparison. I mean, especially the season before, it was everywhere for a while. I mean, it got on, like I don't know.
I remember seeing it, especially like right when you first started doing it.
Yeah, that's when
we
it was
were in
really
that
popular,
peak, like, what is going on?
Yeah,
time
exactly.
Period of like, is this even? What is this? So, man, I have to say, I think it was extra hilarious that not only did you follow through, obviously throughout the whole season until you accomplished it, but to create an actual trophy for it, because you made a trophy for it, right?
I don't want to take too much credit. I didn't make the trophy, but like I ordered it, and customized it. So.
Yeah, but I thought it was hilarious. I thought that was kind of a good addition to kind of the end of it, and then the fact that the Broncos would actually respond, into that.
So.
Personally, I'm a little surprised Russell Wilson didn't want an additional accolade.
Yeah, why not?
Everything that he got this season was pretty negative. Like, hey man, you did it. Like, I've been challenging you all year to do this, and you got it done.
Well, I thought maybe it would be a good look for him to, because people knew about it, and they're like, oh, like he's lighthearted as well. Like he can make fun of himself, but again, he didn't want to do that. So.
He was more of a Broncos country, let's ride thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds more in line with Russell Wilson. So, you mentioned earlier that you were kind of got started on TikTok. So what really got you into making those TikToks? I know you personally too, as well, from those videos you make where they have to say a particular word at the beginning of a song or in the song, and it typically is like the first thing they say, and that's when the music stops.
Yeah, that's kind of how I started. And again, I don't really know why. I had a TikTok, but I actually used to make fun of TikTok quite a bit and say I'd never download one or anything. So I just kind of got one day, and then it was actually on my way home from work. I just had my Spotify like on shuffle or whatever, and like 3 Mike Jones songs came up. And it was just in my head, like, wow, he just says his name so much. So then I was just sitting there at home working, and I was bored. So I just was like, hey, we're going to listen to Mike Jones until he says his name. And it was one of his hits. I don't know. I got to look, whatever the first one was. And it was just right away. And I just posted it. Thinking, oh, yeah, that was fun. But that like blew up for some reason. It was like, I don't know, 5 or 7 million views or something.
So that was your first one?
Yeah, that was the first one.
Oh, wow.
So I had like no followers or anything. Yeah,
So where did your following kind of go from there? 5 to 7 million views. What kind of followers did you get from that?
Just from that, I don't know, like maybe 5,000, like, 10,000. Yeah, something like that. But
so overnight growth.
Yeah, and I didn't plan on really ever continuing it, but people were like, try this song, and then that changed to try Jason Derulo, try this. So I just did that for quite a while, and then once that started getting boring, that's when I did the Russell Wilson thing. And yeah, I mean, it's been fun, and like I said, I never expected TikTok to be a thing, especially for me, but it's been cool. So yeah,
it seems like a lot of our creators that we've had on the show kind of agree with you when it came to the TikTok thing. Yeah, it's like, that wasn't something that I was initially seeking out, but the algorithm works really well for my content, because if people like it, they see it. Like more and more people get to see it, and the followers, and just how TikTok works as a whole. Apparently, there's a big attraction to that. But I'm with you. I was not a particular person to TikTok, but having to be on it now, That's one way or the other. But
Yeah.
I think it's a good route for some of the more like comedic sides of content creation, and it's a good way too to find what you like personally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, so that's all good stuff. So anything that you're working on in particular right now when it comes to like your comedic side of your profile, any new skits in the works at the moment?
Honestly, not a lot. I've been trying. I don't know if you've seen it. I like try to decipher people's vanity license plates, and so really, again, I'm not trying to make this like a living. It's just something I kind of do for fun. So if I randomly think of something, I'll make a video about it and see how it does.
That's awesome, and I think that's probably why people respond so well to your content, because it's not so forced or profit driven or anything like that. It's just pure like, hey, I found this funny, and I hope you find it funny too.
Just trying to have fun, and I've noticed that too. If I make one and then I watch it and I laugh when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, then hopefully other people will also think it's funny. But yeah, those seem to be the ones that do better when I also think that it's funny. So makes sense.
I mean, I have to agree with your line of thinking. All the videos that you posted that I've watched have all been pretty funny, even though, kind of this similar bits have been done with the music. It still is funny each time because you like halfway know what's coming, but just the way you present it, I don't know, it gets me every time.
Good. Well, I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. What would you say is kind of like your highlights at all your videos? If you had to pick like a favorite one that you've made that you think is the funniest one, which one sticks out?
I think just to get away from kind of the Mike Jones and the Russell Wilson ones, I did one where I filters. There's filters on TikTok, and they go above your head.
Oh my gosh, they're ridiculous.
I did ranking my top 5 favorite numbers or something like that with a filter, but I don't know how to use filters, so I like did this over my head and like, I was like, it's a 3. I thought it was really funny. It did really well, so I mean, other people liked it too, and that's what I kind of like to start doing. Also, is just random, just do some stuff for fun, And I really liked that one because it was more than just a few seconds of a Mike Jones song, or it broke away from the Russell Wilson thing, so that was kind of cool.
Right, a little bit different, but still kind of in that same cadence where you're not really forcing the humor. It's still something that you find funny first, and then send out to others. No, that's great, and I wish we had more humorous based content creators that had that same mentality, because I don't know if you're on TikTok or social media a lot, but a lot of these content creators now, it's a lot of fake videos and a lot of fake situations. And I think that they've just lost the fact that, hey, we can see through this, but then like negative, like posts and interactions still get them following. So it's just this weird formula that social media has gotten into now. So it's good to see that we still have some people who are like, I just want to make funny stuff.
Yeah, like, exactly. Yeah.
That's all I'm here to do. Like,
not trying to take it too seriously.
The old school YouTube days and the, what was that 10-second one?
Oh, Vine.
Yeah. The Vine days. Like, that's kind of what that reminds me of. And that was such a pure era of social media. So before we let you go here, Garrett, I have to ask, with the Nuggets, we're on the borderline of the playoffs. What's some predictions that you got heading into the end of the regular season?
I mean, they've looked good. It's tough. Who's in front of them right now? The Thunder, I think, are the first in the West, right? And the Timberwolves. The Thunder, I feel like, could fall pretty quickly. They lost to the Spurs, I think, recently, didn't they? Or someone they definitely shouldn't have lost to. So
yeah, the Thunder are young. They picked up Gordon Hayward, a little bit of a vet, but I think that question mark in the postseason is still a big question mark for them.
Right. It's so tough on the West right now because, I mean, all 3 of those teams are just right there. So, I mean, we could finish anywhere from the 1 to the 3 or 4 seed, I would think, pretty easily. So, I mean, that's what it'll come down to. The Celtics look really good on the East, so that's what I'm worried about. If we do make it to the final, I don't know. I'm sure they'll probably be there. That's at least what I think. So we'll see what happens. But,
yeah, I mean, with the addition of Drew Holiday and Porzingis, Celtics are poised. I mean, the West obviously super deep. The Suns being 6th right now, and
it's crazy.
Obviously still a very talented team. So who knows what could happen? But do you think that they're going to go back to back? If you had to lay a prediction down?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like they have the best all-around team, at least in the West for sure. So at least to the finals, and hopefully they can win it all.
Yeah, and one underrated quality I think that the Nuggets get overlooked a lot with is just that long-term team chemistry. I mean, outside of the rookies and losing a couple guys in the offseason, like, we haven't really changed much of that roster. We even kept Reggie from last year, and I think that long-term chemistry that they have, especially when it comes down to clutch time and playoffs and keeping your egos in check, like, the Nuggets are way ahead of some of these other teams that are going to have some of those issues. So I'm excited for the Nuggets. I agree with your prediction. I think back-to-back's looking pretty solid right now. Tough loss against the Suns the other night, but overall, I think we're we're ready for another one, but it's going to be a bigger test this year for sure.
Yeah, hopefully we get them back in the playoffs. That'd be cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Garrett. So before we let you go here, why don't you tell our listeners where they can see some of your content at? I'm sure a lot of them want to check out some of these funny videos. So where should they be looking?
So it's actually just whatever TikTok assigned me. Like I said, wasn't planning on doing anything. So it's my name, Garret Lee 496, and that's on TikTok. And then I made an Instagram and just used the same thing just to make it easy. So yeah, if you want to check it out. Or if you have any ideas, let me know.
Excellent. Yeah. So Garret Lee 496, and you heard it from him. If you guys have some ideas for some funny stuff, let him know. You might try it out. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Garrett, so much for coming on the show. Come check us out after this short break.
All right, welcome back to Beyond Sports. It was a great interview with Garret Lee. Very funny guy. Made me laugh quite a few times in the studio. Anyways, I'm your host, Bob Taylor. Joining me is my co-host, the Fitted Nuggets fan.
What's up, Nuggets Nation?
We're coming to you from 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio. Up next, we're going to be doing a team profile on Play the Song.
Play the song right now.
God, I love the Orlando Magic's PR team. They're phenomenal. It's pretty much the entire reason I'm doing this team profile this week.
Yeah, they peaked in the 90s and haven't changed anything.
And I don't blame them at all.
They're still waiting for Shaq to come back.
But they just have a really interesting team this year, and I really want to talk about it.
Well.
They're
not talked about at all.
They're really young, and I think they have a really bright future. And hopefully this doesn't go like the last team profile I did with the Pacers, where after I started talking about them, they immediately started playing terrible, and Tyrese Haliburton kind of hasn't been the same since his injury. Anyways, hopefully that doesn't happen this time. But they're fifth in the East. They have a better record than I thought. They're 40-28. I mean, that's pretty decent. They're 10-3 since the All-Star break. They're one of the best teams in the league since the All-Star break, kind of getting hot at a good moment. I don't necessarily think they're anywhere close to a championship contender, but definitely one of those teams to look out for to win a playoff series or two in the East.
Yeah, it could be fun in that postseason. I definitely think we could see maybe something that we saw from the Hawks when they were the 6th seed a couple of years ago, I believe. Hopefully we'll see kind of some explosiveness from them, maybe even a Eastern Conference appearance. But obviously that's a bigger stretch. But with the way they've been playing, I don't think that's out of the realm of reality for them. I mean, they need a heck of a playoff run to get there. But right now they're equipped pretty well. And this team really reminds me of an early on Thunder. They don't have the same quite acquisition of draft picks that the Thunder have at their disposal, but
$1 million.
Just kind of that understated team that's doing pretty well, that no one's really paying much attention to. And I think this is one of those teams that could be number one next year if they acquire the right players in the offseason. I mean, they're not that far away from being a legitimate threat in the East.
Yeah, and I mean, Paolo's that guy. He's been showing he's that guy. He leads his team in literally points per game, rebounds per game, and assists per game in all three major stats. 22.7 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists per
First
game.
year All-Star this year.
Yeah.
Very understated player, too. Like, just not talked about. This Magic team as a whole is just not talked about. And I think the only player that got any buzz outside of Paolo was Franz Wagner for his performance in the FIBA World Cup in the offseason this past year.
Yeah.
With Germany's victory.
And he's got 20 points per game.
He's great. He's been doing really well. And for those of you who don't know Franz is somebody who does not seem like a 20-point per game player just by kind of looking at him. But honestly, a great guy on the court. Really moves well. Been doing great for the Magic ever since he's been there. Been super solid. And with Paolo, he hasn't really taken as much of a step back as I expected him to personally. So it's good to see that they're playing well together. And they're being able to keep that. And then developing their young guys like Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony. I mean, they've got a lot of exciting players. And we can't forget about Jonathan Isaac either. For those of you who truly follow the NBA.
Or Markelle Fultz, former number 1 draft pick.
You should know about Jonathan Isaac. This guy kind of was starting to do that tall man point guard role there for a little bit with the Magic. Then he got hurt, and then he didn't quite return the way we expected him to. Now, keep in mind, he was hurt for quite some time. So Jonathan Isaac not producing a whole lot on the team right now. This is one of those guys I expect to probably take a bit more of a step forward next year, and we'll see how he is kind of, more that pre-injury form, because he was one of those next up players when he was coming up in the league.
Yeah, when he first started, he definitely was. I think he's been kind of plagued by injury, unfortunately.
A lot.
And I think really if he can get healthy, I can see his averages increasing, but with how hurt he gets every season, I don't know if personally he can make that next step. In fact, I think the Magic might choose to move on whenever
we'll see.
they can.
I mean, Markelle Fultz was dealing with a lot of similar stuff, and now
Very
he's
true.
a key component to the rotation. And another player that a lot of our listeners should be familiar with, Gary Harris.
Oh,
It
yeah.
seems like we're not the only ones who've been satisfied with that trade since it happened. Obviously, AG's been a perfect match for us, but we sent Gary Harris to the Magic in that trade, and he is still on the Magic, and he's hanging in there. 7.2 points per game, definitely making a bit of an impact off the bench for them.
Yeah, I think he kind of brings a lot of good like veteran leadership off the bench because it's a super young team.
Yes.
I mean, everybody of note on the team is pretty much in the either.
Gary's his most senior player by far, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't have that.
Yeah, we got some good memories of the Gary when he was on the Nuggets. So, very memorable player for us, kind of in that weird limbo period when we were still figuring out where Murray and Jokic fit, even Will Barton. All kind of a power struggle there, specifically between Will Barton and Gary Harris. Obviously now both have moved on for the Nuggets. But just good to see him still producing on a team. Another player on that team that I've been relatively impressed by is Wendell Carter Jr.
Oh, I love Wendell Carter
And
Jr.
I think this whole roster, I mean, when you really start naming the players on this team, like, they just don't get enough credit. I think specifically Paolo, like, coming into the league, this is his second year. He's averaged 20 points per game for 2 years straight now. And coming in as a rookie, getting 20 points per game, I mean, we're all losing our mind over Wemby, and don't get me wrong, we should. Wemby's a generational talent. He's unbelievable. But Paolo's coming in, and he's kind of producing similar numbers. Now, granted, he's not getting 4 blocks a game, which is another big reason we love Wemby.
But he plays great.
But he
defense.
plays really good. He's been playing
He's also
great.
not 7'6".
He's
or
not
10
7'6"
feet tall or whatever.
Yeah,
Wemby
he's
is.
not a crazy marketing genius. He's not. It's not a player we're marketing out to the masses here. But Paolo to me is a very solid player and definitely worthy of being the face of the Magic if he can continue to improve.
100%, and I think he's taken being the face of the Magic incredibly well.
Yeah, he's taken it in his stride, and that's my
Like
my
I
whole
said,
point. Just right out of the gate with the rookie year. I mean, he takes on a whole team on his shoulders and handled it perfectly.
Yeah, and I think they have essentially like a team full of incredibly good role players. Like we were saying earlier with J.R. Smith, how there are role players, but J.R. Smith is a very high level role player.
Yeah.
I think it's most of their team is essentially high level role players, and I think if they can add 1 or 2 stars, which they have the capability to do, I believe after this season they get $51 million in cap space.
Oh, perfect.
So they're freeing up.
Primed.
Yeah, they're freeing up a lot to potentially get another star to go next to Paolo. And
You know
if
who
they
I
could
think
do
would
that,
be
that
great?
awesome.
And
Who?
I think this is just such a random pick, but I think that this is going to end after this year anyway. Kyrie Irving. I think
Maybe.
Kyrie Irving could be super impactful. Now, the longevity of that trade would be low, and you wouldn't get many years out of Kyrie, I think, because, he's obviously getting closer to the end of his career with the NBA. But I just think that would be a good fit, getting that point guard some strength. Anybody next to Paolo is going to be a good addition, though. I mean, as long as you can bring in another high-level 25-point-per-game or more player, and Paolo continues to take that improvement. Like I said, I think next year, with $51 million in cap space, they sign a 25-point-per-game scorer at a $40-45 million a year contract, or just get him in a trade or whatever you have to do. I mean, that puts them in contention, especially in the East. The East is wide open, in my opinion. I mean, you got to go through Embiid, but with his inconsistency with health,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not always such a big threat. I think the Celtics obviously are a big threat, but if they don't win this year, the question is, are they even going to stay together?
Yeah.
Like, I think if they don't win a title this year, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can't stay together.
You
I
do
mean,
you do got to remember, though, Kyrie is on a 3-year deal, so he's not up at the end of the season. He does request trades constantly, so...
yeah,
you
I
know,
just could see the
maybe he-
Mavericks trying to move on from Kyrie. It hasn't been a terrible relationship. It hasn't been like the Nets.
Especially after last
Hasn't
game.
been like the Celtics. It's been a much smoother transition for him. I'm happy to see that with Kyrie. It's been a very quiet, couple of years with the Mavericks for him. But
year.
Yeah, but either way, I think that with Kyrie on that team, I don't know. I just don't see it going anywhere, personally. I just don't think that Luka and him, I think they play too similar, and they play a similar position. There's just not much advantage you're getting from those two guys being on the same team.
Yeah, I would definitely agree it's not optimal. I do think Kyrie's kind of fit into his role a little better, whereas in Brooklyn and in the Celtics, I don't think he did that as well.
I think he still wanted to be the one guy.
Yeah, but I don't think he does in Dallas. I think he knows Luka's the guy.
But he's taken more of that Cleveland Cavaliers role where he was the clear number 2.
Yeah.
But a super clutch, well-respected number 2.
It's okay to be a Robin.
And we saw that. I mean, they beat the Nuggets. Kyrie hit that last shot. But not to digress too much from the Magic. I mean, the Magic are doing some really impressive stuff. Orlando is obviously prime as far as that placement and the fan base goes. I mean, Orlando, Florida is a beautiful area. So I think that this has a huge potential for them to be some top contenders in the East for a long period of time if they do it right. And I think that this offseason in particular, this next offseason in particular, with that much cap space available, is going to be a big offseason for them in their next 5 years of this organization.
All right, well, this has been our team profile in the Orlando Magic with Beyond Sports. Be sure to follow us on social media at Beyond Sports 5280, and feel free to call in or text the show at 720-446-8463. Again, that number is 720-446-8463. That's all for us this week, so be sure to tune in next Monday at 6 p.m. for another great episode of Beyond Sports.